She'd already asked 4 people, but no one stopped. The late winter wind slipped through coat seams, stinging the faces of passing strangers. No rain, just a cold, so sharp it numbed the skin, to silence. By the edge of an old bus stop, faded sign, rotting bench, stood a small figure, trembling. An elderly woman, silver hair, frail, wearing a worn-out knit sweater from some decade long gone, clutching a cracked leather purse to her chest, eyes fixed on every car that drove by. No one knew how long she'd been standing there, but everyone saw her stretch out a hand, say something, ask for help. The first person looked away, said nothing. The second frowned and muttered, "I don't know that route," then walked off like she might latch onto him. The third gave a sigh, tapped their watch. "I'm already late." Still, she smiled, as if hope was something she refused to let go. Then came the fourth, well-dressed, polished shoes. She asked with a trembling voice, "Excuse me, do you know if the number 12 bus to Willow Hill still runs?" He looked her up and down, then said cold as glass, "I don't have time for senile old people," and walked away, never looked back. And after that, no one stopped. She stayed there, alone, beneath the gray sky, in the midst of car horns and the dead-eyed rush of the crowd. Each time a bus passed, she lifted her head, a flicker of hope in her eyes. That vanished as quickly as the wheels sped by. Her lips moved. "Willow Hill, number 12. I just want to go home." But no one heard. No one wanted to hear. Everyone had somewhere to be, somewhere warm, a world where stopping for a lost soul was no longer part of the routine. Only the wind didn't ignore her. It slipped through her thinning hair, carried the weight of her solitude in every icy gust, as if the world had quietly erased her presence. And then, just as she stepped off the curb, the purse slipped from her hands, hit the pavement. Someone walking by saw it, and this time, he didn't keep walking. Jalen didn't have a home, but he had something this whole town had lost: compassion. Jalen Brown, 18. Tall, skinny, with dark circles under his eyes from too many sleepless nights. His dark skin bore the sting of too many winters without a coat thick enough to hold in warmth. He was born in this town, but he never truly belonged to it. His mother passed away 2 years ago. No one asked why. No one helped him keep the room they'd lived in after the funeral. Since then, Jalen had lived like a shadow, drifting through streets where people looked right through him. Today, the most precious thing he owned was his mother's old bicycle. Rusty, torn seat, brakes screeching with every downhill run. But it kept him working, from sunrise to the blink of streetlights, delivering whatever paid, meds, food, letters, as long as it brought in enough to survive. And today, there was one last delivery. Just had to make it by 8 p.m., enough for a week's rent. If he missed it, he'd sleep in the back of an old warehouse, where the corner store owner let him crash a few nights, as long as he didn't touch the liquor shelf. Thirsty, hungry, head spinning from exhaustion, but he didn't complain, just lowered his head, pedaled harder, focused. Every second mattered. Then, as he passed the old bus stop by the road, something stopped him. His eyes caught her. The old woman was still there, clutching her bag, eyes cast to the pavement, shivering in the wind. Others passed without a glance, but he slowed down, not from curiosity, but because of her eyes. They looked exactly like his mother's. That final day in the hospital, tired, lost, but still trying to remember the way home. Jalen pulled over. His hands gripped the handlebars, ready to move on. Then she bent down to pick up her fallen purse. Her hands trembled, and no one stopped. He couldn't hear what she said, but there was something he did hear, loud and clear, inside himself. If my mom were still alive, I'd pray someone would stop for her too. And Jalen stopped. The address on the pendant led to a hillside, 2 hours away by bike, and the cold was dropping fast. Jalen leaned down, his voice soft. "Ma'am, are you waiting for someone?" The old woman looked up, her eyes fluttered open like waking from a long, uncertain dream. "I'm waiting for the bus, the number 12, to Willow Hill, but I think it must have missed me." Her voice was like the wind, gentle, flickering. Sometimes it faded, like even she wasn't sure where she was anymore. Jalen paused. Willow Hill. He'd never been there, but he'd heard of it. He knew one thing for sure. It sat way up in the northern hills, nearly 10 miles out, and mostly uphill. The number 12 route didn't run anymore. It was shut down last year, after a snowstorm sent 3 buses skidding off the mountain roads. He was about to tell her that, but she had already started rummaging old bus stubs, faded stamps, a torn handkerchief, loose coins. No address, no phone, nothing, except a worn silver necklace hanging around her neck. On the back, in soft hand-etched script, Martha Langley, 142 Willow Hill Lane, North Ridge. Jalen swallowed hard. If he biked her all the way out there, it'd take nearly 2 hours, and that's if everything went smooth. The wind was picking up. The last bit of sunlight had vanished, like someone had flipped a switch, and if he missed this delivery, he'd lose his place to sleep tonight. The ground beneath him seemed to tilt toward logic. One side held shelter, the other, an elderly woman, confused, lost, forgotten. He turned, took a step toward his bike. Then he heard her whisper, "I just want to go home." It was barely louder than the breeze, but it struck the deepest part of Jalen's heart. He remembered his mother, remembered the day she passed, with no one by her side, and he knew, if he walked away tonight, this woman might never make it home. He looked up at the ash-gray sky, then down at the clouded eyes staring back at him, and he made his choice, not the easy road, but the right one. "I begged 4 people, no one helped. Can you show me the way?" The words broke through the silence, fragile as the wind, but heavy, like an indictment of an entire town. Jalen froze. He no longer heard the traffic, no longer cared about the time. All he saw were her eyes, not angry, not pleading, just tired. Tired enough to accept loneliness as part of her fate. He didn't ask any more questions. He just took off his thin jacket, the only thing shielding him from the cold, and draped it over her trembling shoulders. Then quietly, he tied a torn cloth around the torn seat of his bike. His hand gently supported her back, helping her onto the old frame, a bike no one ever imagined would carry a person, let alone carry hope. "Let's go home, okay?" The old woman smiled, her first smile all day, and so they went. A skinny black boy, pedaling a rusted, squeaky bike, carrying an elderly woman wrapped in a blanket, up into the quiet hills. No sirens, no headlights lighting the way, no one watching, no applause, just the grind of a rusted chain and the howl of wind, testing the will of someone moving against the current of indifference. Jalen rode through leafless woods, over fog-covered gravel roads. Every now and then, the old woman would murmur, "You're so kind. You remind me of my grandson. He wore shoes just like those, scuffed toes and all." Jalen let out a soft chuckle. He didn't correct her, didn't complain. His legs burned, lungs ached in the cold, his head buzzed from hunger. But each time she asked, "Are we close?" he answered, "Almost there, ma'am. We're almost there." Not to comfort her, but to steady himself. He no longer thought of the missed delivery, the bed he might lose, or the consequences waiting tomorrow, because in that moment, none of it was bigger than a human being who believed in him completely. The key was gone. The room was now storage, and he was officially homeless. When the white iron gate appeared through the night fog, Jalen could hardly believe his eyes. An old, ivy-covered house. Peaceful. Still. Lights glowing inside. And on the porch, an older man froze in place as he opened the door and saw the woman behind Jalen. "Dear God, Mom, we've been looking for you all day, called every hospital, even filed a report with the police." The old woman smiled, her eyes cloudy but gentle. "This young man brought me home. He's kind. Reminds me of my grandson, the one I lost." The man gripped Jalen's hand, his voice thick with emotion. "Come in, son. Warm up, have something to eat." But Jalen just shook his head. Gently, quietly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old receipt, scribbled a phone number on the back, the only one he had. The phone was cracked, battery nearly dead, but still worked. "If anything comes up, just call. I'm glad she made it back safe." Then he turned to go. No waiting for thanks. No hope for anything more. The night had deepened. The cold was cutting. His old bike groaned beneath him with every pedal. But Jalen felt nothing. He just wanted to get home. Even if it was a tiny rented room, as long as it had a roof. But when he got there, the first thing he saw was a torn plastic bag in front of the door. Inside, an old shirt, a towel, a phone charger with a broken tip, and on the door, a scrap of paper scrawled in pen. "Past due." Locks changed. The lock was different. Jalen checked his pockets, searched every corner of his jacket. No key, no way back, no one waiting, no one opening the door. No one knowing he had just done something greater than himself. He stood there for a long moment. Said nothing. Didn't cry. Just looked down at the frayed backs of his shoes. Then turned around and pedaled toward the back of the Mr. Johnson store. Once said a simple thing. "If you got nowhere else, knock on the back door." Jalen didn't knock hard. Just once. Soft. And a few moments later, the wooden door creaked open, followed by a sigh. "Didn't make it, huh?" Jalen nodded. Mr. Johnson pointed toward the stockroom. "That fold-out bed's still there. Don't touch the liquor, and try not to freeze to death in there." A sleek black car pulled up in front of the small corner store. The driver stepped out and asked, "Are you Jalen?" That morning, the town moved sluggishly, just like any winter day. Jalen woke up in the damp back storage room, curled beneath a thin blanket that barely held off the cold. He didn't complain, just quietly folded the cot, wiped down a few crates, and helped Mr. Johnson restock shelves. A silent ritual of gratitude. No one in the store noticed the black sedan gliding up to the curb. Out-of-town plates. A car too polished, too foreign for this part of the neighborhood. The door opened. A tall man in a long coat stepped out, scanning the store through the window, like he was looking for someone. He pushed open the door. The bell above let out a strange metallic chime, making Jalen look up. "Excuse me, are you Jalen Brown?" The man's voice was deep, precise. Jalen blinked, startled. "Yes, sir, I am." The man gave a slight smile, like he'd finally found a missing piece. "My name's Charles. I'm Mrs. Martha Langley's driver. She sent me to find you." Jalen froze, and from somewhere deep in his chest, something warm flickered, though he didn't yet know why. Charles continued. "She said, you didn't just bring her home. You brought her back to herself." He pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, the very receipt Jalen had scribbled his number on that night. She remembers everything, every turn of the wheels, every word you said, and she'd like to invite you to her home. Jalen said nothing, not because he doubted, but because he was stunned. For the first time in his life, someone had come back for him, not to collect a debt, not to ask for a favor, but to say, "Thank you." Charles met his gaze, calm and sincere. "You didn't help her expecting anything in return. That's exactly why. She wants you to stay, not out of pity, but because she needs someone like you." The little store fell silent. So quiet Jalen could hear the sound of his own breathing. He looked down at his cracked hands, then toward the soft light slipping in through the front door. Maybe. Just maybe. This was the first time life had come knocking, without bringing loss with it. This isn't a contract. It's not charity. It's an invitation. You'll have your own room, a scholarship, and the respect you deserve. Jalen didn't nod right away. He still carried that instinct. The one that comes from surviving on your own too long. The one that teaches you not to trust offers that sound too kind. Because kindness, in his world, usually came with a cost. But then, Mrs. Langley arrived, no longer the lost woman at a bus stop. She walked in with clarity in her eyes, a deep-colored wool scarf draped over her shoulders, and a voice steady with emotion. She stepped into the small grocery store and placed a handwritten note in front of Jalen. "You can stay in my home. You'll have your own room, proper meals, and if you still want to study, I'll help fund your education." Then she looked him straight in the eye. "Not because I feel sorry for you, but because I trust you." Jalen held the paper tight, like it might disappear. He couldn't speak, couldn't explain what it meant to have a door open without a price tag attached. That afternoon, Jalen rode in the black sedan back up the hillside road. But this time, he wasn't the one delivering someone home. He was the one being brought home. His room faced the garden, white bed, sunlight spilled through thin curtains. The air smelled faintly of old books and herbal tea. Not long after, Jalen returned to school. One step at a time, one page at a time, each moment was a journey back. Not back to the past, but back to himself. Together, he and Mrs. Langley, two people who once had nothing in common, built something quietly powerful. The Willow Kindness Fund, a modest organization, but enough to find shelter for homeless youth, offer care to forgotten seniors, and remind the world, kindness isn't a privilege, it's a human right. Neither of them did it for praise. They did it because once upon a time, they knew what it felt like to be left behind. And now, they'd made a promise. No one else gets lost on their watch. He still rode his bike back into town, and every time he passed the old bus stop, he stopped, bowed his head, and smiled. His mother's old bicycle still creaked every time it coasted downhill. The seat was torn, the rear rack tilted permanently to one side, but Jalen never thought about replacing it. He didn't need it to move forward. Remember where he began. He needed it to remember why kindness wasn't some luxury, but the root of everything that's right. Every weekend, Jalen still pedaled down from the hilltop house into town. No more rushing, no more hunger or cold. Just a young man in a simple coat, carrying a library of memories on his back, and a quiet smile on his face. And every time he passed that old bus stop, he'd get off, look around, and bow his head, not to feel sorry for himself, not to relive the struggle, but to remind himself that everything began with one quiet moment, an abandoned elderly woman, a boy who didn't turn away, and a bicycle fighting against the wind. Today, the bus stop had been restored. It had a new roof, clear signs, and on a small bronze plaque it read, "Pause here," because sometimes someone just needs to be seen. No one knew who had placed it there, but the grocery store owner knew. Mrs. Langley knew, and Jalen. He always stayed quiet when people asked. He wasn't the delivery boy people once overlooked. He was now the young man behind an organization that helped others. The name students wrote about in essays titled, "My Unsung Hero." But that's not what made Jalen smile. What did was knowing he'd never changed who he was, still pedaling, still bowing his head, still believing that a single small act can light an entire lifetime. Jalen didn't find a home. Home found Jalen. Some people spend their whole lives searching for a place to belong, and some just need one moment of being truly seen, to finally be chosen. Jalen used to think home was a rundown room with an old rusted lock, a place he fought to keep with every delivery made in the rain, with every coin scraped from the bottom of a torn pocket. But the day he lost everything, his shelter, his savings, the fragile sense of safety he clung to, was the same day something greater began to find him. Not because he demanded it, not because he met the world's criteria for being deserving, but because he chose to stop when everyone else kept walking. And somehow, that simple act of kindness, which seemed to vanish into silence, became the beginning of something real. A family. A family not bound by blood, not certified by paper, but held together by a look of gratitude, a sincere word, and an unconditional invitation. You didn't help me to be repaid. That's exactly why. I want you to stay. Jalen was once a boy no one saw. Now, he is the one who shines light on those the world has forgotten. From an old bicycle, he built an organization that helps homeless youth and isolated seniors. From a single small act, he rewove the thread of trust between human beings. And every morning, as sunlight pours through the window of the house on the hill, Mrs. Martha Langley brews 2 cups of tea and sets one across the table. Not for a guest, but for the boy she now calls grandson. Family isn't who brings you into the world. It's who stays when the world walks away. And kindness, it doesn't need permission. It's instinct. And when given, it always comes back, bigger than we ever imagined.